Welcome to a deep dive into Iron Man 3.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, we're going beyond the typical superhero stuff, like we're looking at the ethical questions this film brings up and
Yeah.
some behind-the-scenes stuff straight from the writers.
Cool.
We've got academic essays, film reviews, even a Q&A with the screenwriters themselves.
Wow, that's a nice mix of perspectives.
It is. It's for anyone who's ever wondered what Iron Man 3 is really saying, or if you just like seeing how complex ideas play out in pop culture.
For sure. So where do we start?
Well, what's really interesting is how Iron Man 3 tackles PTSD.
Oh yeah, that's not something you usually see in superhero movies, is it?
Right. It's such a shift from the usual superhero shrugs it off trope.
Totally.
Like in the first Iron Man, Tony builds his suit in a cave and boom, instant hero.
Exactly.
No time to think about the emotional impact of that.
Not at all. But in Iron Man 3, Tony's really affected by what happened in the Avengers, right?
Oh, yeah, big time.
Panic attacks, insomnia. It's not glossed over at all.
And, that actually ties into a real-world issue.
Oh, how so?
Well, there's this stigma around PTSD, especially for soldiers.
Sadly, yeah.
This pressure to appear strong, to never show weakness.
Makes it hard to seek help.
Yeah, exactly. It makes you wonder, though, could seeing a superhero struggling with PTSD...
Someone like Iron Man?
Yeah, someone who's supposed to be like the epitome of strength.
Interesting.
Could that help destigmatize mental health,
I think it's possible representation matters.
Right.
And seeing Iron Man be vulnerable could open up some important conversations.
Totally. Okay, let's shift gears a bit.
Okay, sure.
Let's talk about the Mandarin.
Ooh, yeah. Iron Man's classic nemesis.
Right, from the comics. And a controversial figure.
To say the least.
Yeah, often criticized for being a harmful stereotype.
Definitely.
So I was super curious to see how Iron Man 3 was going to handle this character.
So what did they do?
Well, they did this whole bait and switch thing with him.
Oh, I see.
At first you think he's the scary terrorist leader, but then it turns out he's just this clueless actor named Trevor Slattery playing a part.
Whoa, what?
I know, right? Big twist.
Yeah, I bet that got mixed reactions.
Oh, it did. Some people loved the subversion, thought it was like one of the smartest villain portrayals ever.
I can see that.
But others felt like it was disrespectful to the comics, or maybe even reinforced stereotypes.
Because it played into them at first.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a tough one.
It is. We actually have a quote from screenwriter Shane Black where he calls the original Mandarin from the comics a racist caricature.
Wow, really?
Yeah. And he talks about how they specifically wanted to avoid that in the film.
That makes sense.
And there's even this line from the film where Killian, the actual villain, says, "Because the second you give evil a face, a Bin Laden, a Gaddafi, the Mandarin, you hand the people a target." So it really makes you think, right?
Definitely. Does this twist subvert expectations, or does it actually end up reinforcing stereotypes?
Exactly. And that kind of connects to another big theme in the movie.
Okay, what's that?
Unintended consequences. Especially when it comes to, technology and military intervention.
Like with Stark's weapons.
Exactly. Designed for good, but ending up causing all this damage in the wrong hands.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the ripple effects of our choices.
It does. Iron Man 3 really shows how good intentions can go so wrong so fast.
I remember this article in Wired about weapons the U.S. supplied to fight al-Shabaab in Somalia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and apparently half of them ended up in al-Shabaab's hands.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty chilling.
It is. So this idea of unintended consequences also takes us to another big theme. Drone warfare.
Oh, right. The scene where Tony uses those remote-controlled Iron Man suits to rescue everyone from Air Force One.
Yes. Visually spectacular and raises so many questions about drones.
There's a great line in an article we have, Policy Innovations, that says, "A drone is only as good or bad as the work it is made to perform."
So true. And it makes you think differently about this technology, seeing Iron Man using it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Especially because in the real world, drone use is controversial.
Absolutely. Especially when it comes to civilian casualties from those U.S. drone strikes.
It's a tough issue.
Yeah.
But that Air Force One sequence,
Oh, so good.
it really shows how Iron Man 3 mixes awesome action with these ethical questions.
It does. And did you know that scene took over 900 skydiver jumps to film?
Whoa, seriously?
Yeah, talk about dedication.
That's incredible. Okay, so we've talked about the themes, the action. What about the behind-the-scenes stuff?
Let's dive in. We have this amazing Q&A with the screenwriters, and it is full of juicy tidbits.
Oh, I love that kind of stuff. What did you learn?
Well, first of all, did you know the script went through a ton of revisions,
Right.
even during filming?
Wow, really?
Yeah, I mean, it's not unusual for big movies, but still.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know how those changes affected things.
Right, and they even talk about how at first they didn't even want to work together.
The writers.
Yeah, but they ended up forming this really strong partnership.
Like Tony and Rhodey.
Exactly. And speaking of partnerships, they talk a lot about how important subtext and surprise are in their dialogue.
Interesting.
What do you mean?
Like, they're always playing with the audience, making you think you know what's going on, and then, bam, something unexpected happens.
I see.
Like a little twist.
Yeah, like in that scene where Killian shows Pepper his extremist-enhanced brain.
Okay.
On the surface, he's just explaining his powers, right?
Yeah.
But there's this underlying tension, almost a seduction.
Oh, wow.
And that adds this whole other layer to the scene.
Makes you look at it differently.
For sure.
Hmm.
And speaking of surprises, get this. They originally had a completely different idea for the Mandarin.
Oh, really? What was it?
Imagine this. Trevor Slattery, the actor, is kidnapped and forced to play the Mandarin.
What? Like a Tootsie situation.
Exactly.
That would have been crazy.
I know, right? It's so cool to get a peek into the other paths the story could have taken.
Yeah, for sure. And you said there were some cool deleted scenes.
Oh, yeah. Remember how we were talking about the action?
Yeah.
Well, there's this amazing car chase scene they cut.
Oh, no. Why?
Budget cuts.
Oh, bummer.
I know, right? It was supposed to be through Miami with Tony in this busted-up suit that only had like 15 seconds of power at a time.
Whoa, that sounds intense.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Imagine like Iron Man meets Ronin, all high stakes and crazy driving.
I can picture it. So what else?
Okay, get this. This one's shocking. Remember, Pepper gets injected with extremists?
Yeah.
They almost included a scene where she's detoxing from it, like convulsing and shooting bolts of energy.
No way. Serious?
Well, I know, right? They even shot footage, but ultimately cut it.
Wow, that's wild. It makes you think, how would that scene have changed Pepper's story?
Totally. It's like, what other secrets are hidden away in the Marvel vault?
That's a great question.
Right. Okay, now here's something they didn't consider. The demon in the bottle storyline from the comics.
Tony's struggle with alcoholism.
Exactly. Pretty heavy topic.
Yeah.
And the writers were pretty quick to dismiss it, said it was way too dark for a Disney film.
I can understand that.
Hmm.
Still, it makes you wonder how they could have explored Tony's darker side without going down that road.
It does, right? So many possibilities.
It's fascinating to think about all the different ways a story could go.
Totally. It reminds you that even with these huge blockbuster films, there's still so much creativity and thought going on behind the scenes.
Absolutely. So what are your final thoughts on Iron Man 3? What stood out to you the most? For me, it's how Iron Man 3 handles those big ethical questions.
Yeah, like we were saying, it's not your typical superhero flick.
No, not at all. It really makes you think, especially about the Mandarin twist.
Oh, yeah, we got to talk more about that.
It's such a pivotal moment. Really.
Totally. And it sparks so much debate.
Definitely. I mean, think about it.
I know some fans felt cheated, like it undermined the Mandarin's legacy as this powerful enemy.
Right. They felt it was a missed opportunity to explore, like, cultural clashes and global power dynamics, especially with the Mandarin's roots in Chinese history and mythology.
Yeah, I get that. The original Mandarin's backstory is so rich.
It really is. There was definitely potential there for a compelling story.
One that could have challenged stereotypes and explored those complex East-West relations.
Absolutely. But then again,
Here's the counter-argument.
right, some see the twist as a clever commentary on our own biases.
It's like we see the stereotypical terrorist leader, but it's all a facade.
Exactly. And it forces us to confront our own preconceived notions about villains, you know?
It's like the film is saying, don't judge a book by its cover, especially when it comes to evil.
Right. True villainy often hides in plain sight.
Masked by charisma, wealth, even good intentions. Which brings us to Aldrich Killian.
The real villain.
Yeah. Driven by this deep resentment, and he uses extremists to become this huge threat.
And his motivations are different, too.
Right. He's not after world domination or anything.
More personal. He wants revenge.
Makes him more complex, right?
Definitely. You can understand his anger.
Even if you don't agree with his actions and his transformation with extremists.
The regenerative technology.
Yeah, it highlights those ethical dilemmas we talked about.
Meant for healing, but becomes a weapon in his hands.
It's like a warning about scientific progress.
Totally. The potential for good or harm.
The responsibility that comes with innovation, But let's be real, Iron Man 3 is more than just thought-provoking.
Oh yeah, it's a visual spectacle.
The action is incredible, bigger and bolder than ever.
From the attack on Tony's mansion.
To that crazy Air Force One rescue.
Amazing. It delivers on those thrills.
And the final showdown on the oil rig.
Pure magic. Tony unleashing all his suits.
It's a culmination of his genius.
His will to survive.
And you see how his suits have evolved.
From the clunky Mark I
to the sleek Mark 42.
Controlled remotely. Assembles itself.
It's mind-blowing. That house party protocol gave me chills.
The visual effects are incredible,
Yeah.
blending seamlessly with practical effects.
And it shows the scale of Tony's world.
His workshop, crammed with all those suits.
Symbols of his ingenuity.
And maybe his obsession.
I can't even imagine trying to shut down my brain with all those ideas. But speaking of creative minds...
The screenwriter Q&A.
Yeah. It really gives us a glimpse into those challenges.
Of crafting such a complex story.
Balancing fan expectations with the desire to reach a wider audience.
And fitting Iron Man 3 into the larger MCU.
Like a giant jigsaw puzzle, right?
Each film adding a new piece.
And it seems like they enjoyed that challenge.
Using it to explore new themes.
Pushing the boundaries of the genre. And one of their key decisions.
Setting it apart from the previous films.
In tone and theme.
Focusing on Tony's psychological state.
His vulnerabilities.
His struggle to cope after the Avengers.
And that focus on character development elevates Iron Man 3.
You see Tony wrestling with his demons.
His fear of failure.
His need to prove himself.
He's not just a superhero.
He's a complex human.
Trying to figure things out.
And his journey is mirrored in his suits.
They become extensions of himself.
Reflections of his anxieties.
Blurring the line between man and machine.
Making us question what it means to be human in this technological age.
We talked about their partnership, but it's worth mentioning again.
Their emphasis on subtext and surprise.
They wanted natural, layered conversations.
Where characters hide their true intentions.
Or struggle to express their feelings.
Adding complexity to the film.
Making you pay attention.
Reading between the lines.
Creating those moments of surprise.
And emotional depth.
It's like they're challenging the audience.
To stay one step ahead.
And then they pull the rug out.
With a twist or a reveal.
While still delivering the action and humor.
It's a tricky balance.
But they pull it off.
And we can't forget the humor.
Shane Black is known for his witty dialogue.
Those snappy one-liners. The self-aware joke.
It adds a layer of playfulness.
I loved how they subverted expectations with the Mandarin.
Turning him into this almost comedic figure.
It adds satire and social commentary.
Reminds us not to take ourselves too seriously.
That ability to blend genres and tones.
That's what makes Iron Man 3 so unique.
It's not just a superhero movie.
It's a character study.
A commentary on our anxieties.
And a celebration of storytelling.
So much packed into one film. Before we wrap up, what resonated with you the most? You know, it's amazing how Iron Man 3 can be so entertaining.
I know, yeah.
And still make you think about these big issues.
Yeah, totally. It really shows the power of storytelling.
For sure. It makes you wonder, can superhero movies actually reflect our own world?
That's a good question. Can these fantastical stories really make us think about real ethical dilemmas?
I think so.
Me too?
Iron Man 3 definitely grapples with some of those big anxieties we have.
Like what?
Terrorism, weapons proliferation,
Yeah.
the psychological impact of violence, the ethics of drone warfare.
Yeah, heavy stuff.
It's not giving us easy answers, but it's making us think about them differently.
Through Tony Stark's eyes.
Exactly.
That's what I love about doing these deep dives.
What do you mean?
We're not just like dissecting a movie.
Right.
We're using it as a starting point to explore these larger ideas.
To challenge our own assumptions.
Yeah. And see the connections between fiction and reality.
It reminds us that even in entertainment, there could be deeper meaning.
For sure.
Questions that stick with you long after the credits roll.
Absolutely. Sometimes those questions can spark amazing conversations.
Even inspire us to do something.
I hope so. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Iron Man 3,
Okay.
I want to leave you with one final thought.
What's that?
If you were directing Iron Man 4, what ethical issue would you explore through Tony Stark?
Wow, that's a challenge.
It is, right?
A challenge worthy of Tony Stark himself.
Uh-huh.
Using storytelling to make sense of our world and inspire us to imagine something better.
I like that. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Iron Man 3.
It was fun.
We hope you enjoyed exploring these ideas with us. Until next time, keep diving deep.